You're listening to an African Elements top news story for June 26, 2025. Please visit our website at africanelements.org for more daily news. Sudan's civil war, a proxy conflict's devastating impact. The civil war in Sudan, which began in April 2023, has plunged the nation into one of the world's most catastrophic humanitarian and displacement crises. This conflict pits the Sudanese armed forces against the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces in a brutal struggle for political and economic power. The fighting has transformed Sudan, once a vibrant nation, into a landscape of immense suffering and instability. The toll on human lives and livelihoods is staggering, with countless families torn apart and communities shattered. This internal struggle has been further complicated by the extensive involvement of foreign powers, turning a domestic crisis into a complex proxy war with far-reaching consequences for the Sudanese people and the broader African continent. The current civil war in Sudan is a direct result of deep-seated tensions between two powerful military factions, the Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces. The Sudanese Armed Forces, led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, represents the official military of Sudan. The Rapid Support Forces, a formidable paramilitary group, operates under the command of General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, also known as Hemedti. These two forces, once uneasy allies, are now locked in a deadly embrace, vying for control over the nation's future. The roots of this conflict trace back to the 2019 uprising, which successfully ousted longtime dictator Omar al-Bashir. A military-led government was formed with the stated goal of transitioning to civilian rule. However, the Rapid Support Forces, having secured significant business interests and an independent command structure, showed reluctance to relinquish these advantages. This created a dangerous rift within the military establishment. A military coup in October 2021, led by General Burhan, occurred just months before the planned civilian transition, further escalating these tensions and ultimately igniting the current civil war. The conflict in Sudan has elements of a proxy war. This means major international powers, rather than directly engaging in combat, support opposing sides in the conflict. They often provide financial, military, or logistical aid. In Sudan, various foreign states have taken sides, turning the internal struggle into a battleground for external interests. The conflict in Sudan is not merely a domestic struggle, it is profoundly shaped by extensive foreign interference. Various foreign states have taken sides, effectively turning it into a proxy war. External actors involved include Chad, Egypt, Iran, Libya, Qatar, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. These nations have diverse interests in Sudan, ranging from geopolitical influence to economic gains, which drive their support for different factions. Middle Eastern monarchies, particularly Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are deeply involved in Sudan due to a combination of geopolitical, economic, and strategic interests. These interests include securing access to resources, expanding regional influence, and controlling strategic locations like the Red Sea, which is vital for global shipping lanes. Their support for different factions in the conflict aims to secure favorable outcomes for their respective agendas in the region. Saudi Arabia reportedly supports the Sudanese armed forces. The UAE is alleged to back the Rapid Support Forces. The UAE's alleged arming of the RSF is highlighted by rebels and evidence such as a Colombian passport with a UAE exit visa displayed by a fighter. Other global powers also have a stake. Russia is reportedly negotiating a military deal to establish naval facilities in Port Sudan, a critical location on the Red Sea shipping lanes. Russia's private military company, the Wagner Group, has been deployed to guard Sudanese gold mines, indicating a clear economic interest in the country's resources. China, a significant investor in Sudan over the years, also faces threats to its economic interests from the prolonged conflict. The involvement of these diverse external actors, each with their own agendas, has deepened the conflict and made a peaceful resolution increasingly difficult to achieve. The civil war in Sudan has created one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. This crisis is marked by massive displacement, severe food insecurity, and a dire lack of essential services. Millions of people have been forced from their homes, seeking refuge in neighboring countries or within Sudan's borders. The conflict has displaced more than 14 million people, making it the world's worst displacement crisis. The conditions faced by displaced people are dire. They have limited access to food, clean water, shelter, and health care. Nearly half of Sudan's population is acutely food insecure. 638,000 people face catastrophic levels of hunger, the highest number globally. The Sudanese army has blocked humanitarian aid from reaching territories controlled by the Rapid Support Forces, contributing to an impending famine. The lack of medical facilities and widespread hunger contribute significantly to the death toll, which estimates range from 20,000 to 150,000. This human tragedy underscores the urgent need for effective international intervention and aid. The international community has struggled to mount an effective response to the crisis in Sudan. Organizations like the African Union and the United Nations have roles in promoting peace and stability, but their efforts in Sudan have been largely ineffective. The African Union reacted to the October 2021 military coup by suspending Sudan's membership, a diplomatic measure intended to pressure the military leadership. However, despite the involvement of various international bodies, the situation in Sudan has only worsened, creating one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. The reasons for this ineffectiveness are complex. They often involve a lack of unified international political will, the difficulty of mediating between deeply entrenched factions, and the immense challenges of delivering humanitarian aid in an active conflict zone. The United Nations Security Council remains deeply divided on the issue, and the African Union has not proposed a workable plan. This division and inaction allow the conflict to fester, with devastating consequences for civilians. The international community, therefore, plays a dual role, inadvertently exacerbating the conflict through external support for warring parties, while also attempting to resolve it through humanitarian aid and diplomatic efforts. External actors, including Middle Eastern monarchies and other global powers, contribute to the conflict's intensity by providing financial and military support to the warring factions, effectively fueling the proxy war. Saudi Arabia and the UAE, for example, are providing financial and military support to the warring parties, despite their denials. Conversely, international organizations like the African Union and the United Nations have attempted to mediate and provide humanitarian aid. However, their efforts have been hampered by the complexity of the conflict and a lack of unified international action. This highlights a critical challenge: how to compel external actors to cease their interference and instead support genuine peace initiatives. The prolonged civil war in Sudan casts a long shadow over the country's political stability and economic future. The conflict has already led to widespread displacement and a dire humanitarian crisis, which will require extensive recovery efforts for generations to come. With an estimated 62,000 deaths and approximately 14 million individuals displaced, the societal disruption is immense. Politically, the deep divisions between the Sudanese armed forces and Rapid Support Forces, exacerbated by external interference, make a stable and unified government incredibly difficult to achieve. The path to democratic governance and rule of law appears increasingly distant amidst the ongoing violence. Economically, the war has been catastrophic. The destruction of infrastructure, disruption of trade routes, and diversion of national resources to conflict will severely hinder development and perpetuate poverty. China's significant investments in Sudan are now threatened by the prolonged conflict, indicating a negative impact on the country's economic prospects. The conflict also risks regional spillover, further destabilizing neighboring countries like Libya, Chad, and the Central African Republic. This threatens broader economic and security dynamics across the Horn of Africa and the Sahel, impacting millions beyond Sudan's borders. The international community must recognize these far-reaching implications and act decisively to prevent a wider regional catastrophe. Copyright African Elements.